Hello everyone and welcome to today's video. Today I'm doing a fun hypothetical scenario for the 2026 Senate elections, and this involves shifting the 2026 Senate map by roughly 5 points towards the Democratic direction for 2026. Now, just to give you an idea where this idea came from. Right now, the current generic congressional ballot for 2026 in the Real Clear Politics polling average is approximately Democrat plus 2.9. Now, when you examine the Senate map from back in 2020, the Republicans won by roughly that margin of roughly about 2.9, 2.8% or so, about 3 points. So to shift it this way to get the result for 2026, you would have to shift the map by approximately 5 points. So I thought it'd be fun to shift the Senate map results from the 2020 map towards the Democrats by 5 points and just showing what the election results would look like just based on that alone. Now, obviously, this isn't how elections work and such, and I'll provide additional commentary, but I thought it would be very interesting to go through this and kind of see how it would go. First things first, though, I do just want to point out we have two elections that are up in 2026 that were not up on the 2020 map in Ohio and Florida. These are now special elections. So for this one, what I'm going to do is I'm going to shift this, where this one was Democrat and Republican essentially even. So instead of shifting this one by 5 points for the Democrats, I'm going to shift this one, since the Republicans won by about 0.1, I'm going to shift this one about 3 points towards the Democratic side, just to get that 2.9% number. So for the 2022 map, I'm going to shift it approximately 3 points to get to the Democratic side here. And doing so, that would bring Ohio into the lean category and Florida into the likely category. So going off that result, which was the Senate races from 2022, Ohio goes lean and Florida goes likely, which both of these results are certainly very possible in 2026 if we're to play out that way. But now with that out of the way, we can look at the election results in 2020, where we'll start out with some states like Oregon, which was a safe Democratic win here. On the new map, it would also be more of a safe Democratic win, not really too much of a surprise. We'd also see safe wins in Idaho, Wyoming, South Dakota, Nebraska, Oklahoma, Arkansas, and Louisiana. So let's just start filling some of these states in as they are on this map. Again, not really too much of a surprise. Nebraska is interesting because Dan Osborne did not run in that election. He will be running this time. So again, you're going to see some lapses here where it's not totally going to work out 100% this way, but still kind of interesting here. So some of these elections, we also have Tennessee, Alabama, and West Virginia that are going to be safe as well. Tennessee, Alabama, West Virginia on that one. That brings Republicans up to 42. I don't think I'm missing any Republican states on that one. Yeah, okay. And now the Democrats do have safe states in Illinois, Virginia, Delaware, New Jersey, Rhode Island, Massachusetts, and interestingly enough, the state of New Hampshire. So let's fill all these ones in here. And this is interesting because New Hampshire is expected to be one of the more competitive races as well in 2026. But based on the 2020 election map and shifting it 5 points for the Democrats in this scenario, here, New Hampshire would actually be a safe state for the Democrats, as Jeanne Shaheen had a very big win back in 2020 against their Republican opponent. So that gets Democrats to 42, Republicans at 42. Now we're going to the states that are going to be more likely than safe in this category. After the shift in the election results, you see Montana, Alaska, Kansas, and Kentucky, and South Carolina all go into the likely Republican category. So let's just first go through and give these as likely Republican. Montana, Alaska, let me just double check here. Yes, Kansas and Kentucky go likely Republican, and South Carolina. That gets the Republicans up to 47 with this new electoral map. Now, on the Democratic side, we see Colorado, New Mexico go likely Democratic. Arizona, which was up at the time, but there will not be a Senate race in Arizona in this one. Minnesota and Michigan and Georgia all go likely Democratic. So this is very interesting as well, seeing how a 5-point improvement would do for the Democrats in these races. That would get the Democrats up to 47 Senate seats, Republicans still at 47. Now we have some states in South Dakota, Iowa, Texas, Mississippi, North Carolina, and in Maine. And in this one, I did miss South Dakota. Sorry, that should be safe Republican. I did miss that one. I do apologize for that. Now we have some very interesting results here. In this shift, it actually shows Texas, Mississippi, Iowa, and Maine being lean Republican states. Now, it's interesting seeing Maine, obviously, as Republican Senator Susan Collins. This is expected to be a very close race without a doubt. It's going to be very close. But Iowa, Texas, or Mississippi, and Texas being all lean is very interesting, as these are three states that are currently viewed as likely Republican, but Democrats, in trying to expand the map, are targeting Iowa and in Texas and Mississippi. I've seen some comments about Mississippi and how the Republican incumbent there, Cindy Hyde-Smith, typically underperforms compared to other Republicans in the state in the election results. So that could be very interesting. Now we have the state of North Carolina, and this is where things get very, very interesting. Tom Tillis' last race, I talked about in several videos how Tom Tillis would be as a general election candidate and how he's been one of the more weaker, underperforming Republicans in the state. Based on this shift on this new map, North Carolina actually moves into the lean Democratic category. So even in this scenario, which doesn't affect or account for the fact that Roy Cooper is the Democratic candidate, North Carolina becomes a lean Democratic state. This would get the Republicans to 52 Senate seats, Democrats at 48. And this is very interesting because the margins are obviously very much way off from how I currently have them in my own map. But this is the exact number of Senate seats I currently have in my prediction for 2026. I do currently have Republicans getting 52 Senate seats and Democrats getting 48. So it is interesting just doing a 5-point shift on the Senate map of their election results from 2020 to 2026 for the more Democratic environment. The Senate seat numbers actually lining up exactly where I thought it would be. Now we get into some of the conversations about some of these results that are interesting. North Carolina being in the lean Democratic category, you could argue with Roy Cooper as the Democratic candidate, it very well could end up being lean Democratic. Michigan being likely Democratic, I think after the 2024 Senate race, this one might be a little bit more of a stretch, but without President Trump at the top of the ticket to lead Republicans and get a lot of Republican vote out there, is it impossible for the Democrats to break 5% in the state of Michigan? I wouldn't say it's impossible, especially if something happens in the next year or so where President Trump and the Republicans' approval ratings start going down, then I think it's certainly possible. Georgia being a likely Democratic win also is not really impossible either when you look at the fact that if it goes to a runoff election, if the Republican candidates or Republicans cannot coalesce around one candidate, or if a scandal breaks out, I think John Ossoff could win by a little bit more than 5 points. I certainly wouldn't bet on it, but I think it is possible. But those three are very interesting to watch. New Hampshire being a safe Democratic win, I already voiced my disagreement on that. I don't expect that to happen. But again, Democrats, I think, certainly have an advantage in that state. Maine still remaining a lean Republican state, though, even after the 5-point shift, shows how strong of a night that Susan Collins did have back in 2020. And what's interesting here, when you look at this map, Collins won by 8.6%, but Collins did get 51% of the vote on the first round. Two independent candidates, or two third-party candidates, got about 6% of the vote. If there was not a third-party candidate in this race, I think we more likely than not see the Democrat Sarah Gideon likely do much better than the actual results ended up being. That could be something to watch for as well and factoring in for 2026. Now, when you look at states like Ohio, Iowa, Texas, and Mississippi being lean Republican, this is also pretty interesting. Ohio, not really too much of a shock in terms of we just saw a Senate race where the Republican defeated the Democratic incumbent Sherrod Brown by a lean Republican margin, and there are rumors that Sherrod Brown is considering possibly running for Senate again in 2026. Now, this time around, Brown would not be the incumbent, but he would be running in an election environment that would be more favorable for the Democrats than 2024 was. Now, John Husted, the Republican senator, is a stronger candidate than Bernie Moreno is, in my opinion and forecasting thus far. So everything kind of balances out, but I wouldn't expect that Ohio being under 5 points would be a hot take at all for the 2026 Senate election, so that's very feasible. The state of Iowa being under 5 points as a lean Republican state with Joni Ernst as well, I don't think is very unfeasible either. Again, in an election environment that's more friendly for the Democrats, and Joni Ernst's recent statements and such that have certainly caused her approval ratings to go down, I think Iowa being under a 5-point victory, I wouldn't think it'd be by very much, but maybe a 4.5-point win for Joni Ernst in Iowa, again, I really don't think is that unrealistic. Now, Texas also being under 5 points, if Ken Paxton were to become the Republican nominee, I really think this is a very realistic possible scenario that Texas ends up being under a 5-point win. Again, don't forget, in 2018, the last Democratic wave midterm year, Ted Cruz only won his Senate race by a little bit under 3 points. So Texas has very relatively recently had a very close Senate race with a Republican candidate that in the polls heading into the election day was not super popular among the Texas electorate. Ken Paxton would probably be just like that, if not even worse. Texas being a lean Republican win certainly could be in the cards for 2026. Now, Mississippi is interesting. Mississippi I want to do a little more digging on because Cindy Hyde-Smith in the state of Mississippi only won by 10 points, where the other Senate race, which was up in 2024, the Republican Roger Wicker won by 25.6%. But Cindy Hyde-Smith only won by 10 points against Mike Espy. So there could be some potential to watch Mississippi that I don't think, like the map in this scenario, has it as a lean Republican state. I don't think it would go that far on the actual Senate map. But there is some real potential. Mississippi could be under a safe Republican win again. It may be a state that goes in the likely Republican category rather than safe Republican category due to the fact that Democrats maybe are doing a little bit better in that race because it's Cindy Hyde-Smith and not another candidate. So that's very interesting. As for the other safe states, safe in Oregon, Illinois, Delaware, New Jersey, Massachusetts, Rhode Island, and Virginia. I already talked about New Hampshire, but these states, there's not really too much to argue here. Not really too much I disagree with. I mean, these were already pretty much safe states that got even more blue. Virginia with Mark Warner, maybe, unless the Republicans put up a formidable candidate like Glenn Youngkin, I don't think this race is going to be really anything other than safe Democrat or at very least very high ceiling likely Democrat. So I don't really have much to argue on there. The only safe Republican seat that I would argue is not safe would be the state of Nebraska with Dan Osborne versus Pete Ricketts. I do think that'll be under 15% margin of victory. But I thought this was a very interesting video, a very interesting exercise. It'll be interesting to see how this all plays out for 2026. If this map, which again is just shifting the 2020 map by about 5 points and then adding in Ohio and Florida, it'd be interesting to do kind of a revision on this after the 2026 midterm elections and seeing, did this map even come close to getting some results? Did it correctly predict a lean Democratic win in North Carolina, or likely Democratic win in Michigan or in Georgia, or a lean Republican win in Iowa or Texas or Ohio? It could be very interesting to watch how this could go for 2026 and if it ends up being semi-close to this or where it gets right or not. I think that'd be a very interesting conversation to come back to. I thought this was a fun video. I thought it was interesting. Make sure to leave your thoughts down below. If you enjoyed this video, if you'd like to see me do more videos like this type of scenario video going forward, leave all your thoughts down below. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you in a future video. Hello everyone, welcome to today's video. Today I'm doing an updated 2028 presidential election prediction. In this video, I'm doing the matchup of Kamala Harris, the former Vice President of the United States, versus J.D. Vance, the current Vice President of the United States. Now, I wanted to do this video today, as just a few days ago, we got the news that Kamala Harris will not be running for governor of California in 2026, and this has obviously sparked the speculation that Kamala Harris may be running for president again in 2028. Now, obviously, we are in August of 2025. 2028 is a long ways away, and how the country is doing by then is going to be very hard, if not impossible, to predict at this point in time. Things could be going great for the country, things could be going not so great, and those will have very huge ramifications for the 2028 election. But I'm doing this election prediction for 2028 as of right now, as how I think this election would go. Now, Harris in the early polling thus far in 2028, though she's seen her lead diminish a lot, she does still lead in the race to the White House polling average, whereas J.D. Vance is the clear leader on the Republican side, and if he runs, he will be the Republican nominee. Starting with the safe states, I think we see this election be more of what 2024 was, but in defense for Kamala Harris, I do think that really she can only do better than how 2024 went, seeing as everything with 2024 was after 4 years of a Joe Biden presidency, where President Biden at the time was very unpopular in the polls in the final months of his presidency. And you saw pretty much President Trump make gains literally in every single part of the country. Just comparing 2020 to 2024, literally every area in the country except Nebraska's 1st Congressional District moved towards Donald Trump. So after 4 years of a Trump presidency, even if President Trump is holding decent approval ratings, we're probably going to see the Democrats at least make some incremental gains going into 2028. And how I think that starts out with, for the safe states, we're going to start with Kamala Harris. I think she wins Washington, Oregon, California, and Hawaii, all by the safe Democratic margin. I think we're also going to see some states that were narrowly under 15%, which is the safe threshold, move back to the safe side in 2028. I think Illinois will go safe for the Democrats. Washington, D.C. will be safe, unsurprisingly, as well as the state of Maryland, the state of Delaware, the state of New York, Connecticut, Rhode Island, Massachusetts, Vermont, and Maine's 1st Congressional District. I think will all be safe again in 2028. Now, in a few cases, some of these states were under 15 points by a little bit in 2024. But again, with going from 2024 to 2028, I think we see Harris, or whoever the Democrats nominate, make some improvements in these safe areas especially. I think we'll see these areas move a little bit more to the Democratic side from 2024. Now, there are some states I think J.D. Vance would win by a safe margin. And these are going to be the states of Utah, Wyoming, Idaho, Montana, North and South Dakota, Nebraska, the state at large and its 3rd district, the state of Kansas, Oklahoma, Missouri, Arkansas, Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, Tennessee, Kentucky, Indiana, West Virginia, and South Carolina, all of which I'm very confident are going to be safe Republican states. Now that puts Vance up at 121, Harris is at 167. Now we're going to get into the states that I call likely, which are in between 5 and 15% margin of victory. These are states that I'm very confident in forecasting how they will go for 2028. Can't totally be for sure, but are very, very confident at how they will go. And these are states based off the 2024 map where I think we see Harris make a lot of the percentage difference here. You see Colorado being an 11-point win, New Mexico a 6-point win, even New Jersey being a 5.9% win. Unless President Trump is doing super well come 2028, or Kamala Harris is doing super, super bad in the polling, I think we're going to see a little bit of Democratic improvement in these states. So I think Colorado goes likely Democratic, New Mexico goes likely Democratic, New Jersey goes likely Democratic, and the state of Virginia goes likely Democratic as well. These are all 4 states that were likely Democratic wins for Harris in 2024, and I do think they would be again, but I do think the margins will be a little bit more for the Democrats, adding about 1.5 to 2% in this race. Also, just to give you an idea, President Trump won the popular vote in 2024 over Kamala Harris by roughly about 1.5%. I think we're probably going to see at best for J.D. Vance probably around a 0.5% win for him on the popular vote, if not even better for Kamala Harris in this election. I don't think we're going to see Vance win by the same numbers that President Trump did. But that would get Harris up to 209 of the states I'm super confident are going to be likely Democratic wins, meaning I think in between 10 and 15% for sure on the likely Democratic side. We also have some states for the Republicans I think are in that category, one of which is certainly the state of Florida. It may break 15% come 2028, but I do think it remains just a little bit under, around 14.5%. The state of Texas I think would also be in this category of likely for the Republicans, around 10 to 15%, and the state of Alaska would also be in that category. That puts Vance up to 194. Then we also have some House districts to talk about as well, where Nebraska's 1st district would go in the likely Republican category. And then that's probably going to be, 2nd district I think would also be in this category as well, around that 10% margin. That puts Vance up to 196. Now we have a few more likely calls, but these are areas that I think might be around that 10-point or a little bit under margin of victory. The first one's going to be the state of Maine, where we saw Kamala Harris win this state in 2024 by about 6.9%. I think for Vance versus Harris, we could see this be a race around 7 or 8 point margin of victory, maybe even 9 point for Kamala Harris in this election. Then we have the 2nd Congressional District, which nearly was a likely win for Kamala Harris in 2024, is 4.7%. I would bet pretty much everything we're going to see this district go more Democratic in 2028, where Harris wins it by more than 5 points, around 6.5, where I'm currently forecasting it at this time. Next, we have the state of Minnesota. This was the running mate Tim Walz's home state, a 4.2% win for Kamala Harris, and I think we see this state go more Democratic in 2028 for Harris versus Vance than it was in 2024. This puts it up to 222 for Kamala Harris. Now we have some more likely states as well for the Republicans in Iowa and Ohio for J.D. Vance. These are two states that were likely Republican wins in 2024. 13 points in Iowa, 11 points in Ohio. I think we're going to see these be around 10% or so in these states for 2028. That puts Harris at 222. Vance is at 219. The rest of these states, I think, are either going to be toss-up states or at very least are worth the conversation of having. Now, the state of New Hampshire is very interesting because New Hampshire was a state in 2024 that only voted for Kamala Harris by 2.8% against Donald Trump. Now, in 2020, it voted for Joe Biden by 7.4% against Donald Trump. But in 2016, even though there was a lot of third-party vote, it voted for Hillary Clinton by 0.37. New Hampshire is a very interesting state. It's been pretty reliable, even by smaller margins. It's been a Democratic win at the presidential level, going all the way back to the year 2000. And for 2028, I don't think New Hampshire is going to be a red state, but I'm very skeptical on what the margin of victory will be. Because when I thought it was going to be a competitive state in 2020, it ended up being a likely Democratic state. When I thought it'd be a likely Democratic state in 2024, it was a lean Democratic state. So I'm really not sure how New Hampshire is going to swing in 2028. Does it move more to the right like it did in 2024? Does it move more to the left in 2028? We're going to have to wait and see how it all goes. Right now, I'm putting New Hampshire just barely in the lean Democratic category, right around a 4.5 point victory for Kamala Harris over J.D. Vance. But that's a state I'm very fascinated to watch and see how that state will trend going into 2028. Now we're going to move west to the state of Nevada. Nevada voted for Donald Trump by roughly 3.1% over Kamala Harris in 2024, after the state voted for Joe Biden by 2.4% in 2020. This will also be a very big indicator for 2028 at how J.D. Vance is doing in comparison to President Trump in the state of Nevada from 2024 to 2028. I think in this one, we're not going to see Vance win the state by 3 points. I do think the state has certainly moved a lot to the Republican direction in the last 4 years. I think we're going to see J.D. Vance carry the state of Nevada, but I think we're going to see him win it by a little bit less than that 3.1%, around a 2-point victory or so in the state of Nevada. In the state of Arizona, Arizona voted for Donald Trump over Kamala Harris by 5.5%. President Trump made a lot of big gains in Maricopa County, winning it by 3.5%. Now, again, this is an area that I think is going to swing a little bit back towards the Democrats after a very hard swing to the Republicans in 2024. I think Arizona, the margin of victory will also be smaller than 2024. I will think it will be a lean Republican window in the state of Arizona, under 5 points, around 4.5 point victory for J.D. Vance in the state of Arizona. You could also bet we're probably going to have to wait at least a few days for all the votes to come in on Arizona like it has the last few presidential cycles. This puts Vance up to 236, Kamala Harris at 226. Now we have the state of Georgia, whose polls close at 7 p.m. Eastern Time, and one of the most important early tests of how the candidates are doing in this matchup. This state only voted for Donald Trump by 2.2% in 2024 after it shocked everyone by voting for Joe Biden by 0.24% in 2020. I think how Georgia's going is going to be a very big indicator of how J.D. Vance and Kamala Harris are doing in 2028. And I do think this is a state Kamala Harris is going to cut into the margins of 2024. Now, a 2.2% win for Harris, if the state moved 1 point based on the national popular vote, it would move to about a 1.2% J.D. Vance win. And that's currently where I'm forecasting it right now. I'm questioning putting it maybe in the tilt category, being under 1 point, but I do think J.D. Vance will be able to hold on just a little bit to the gains made by President Trump in 2024 to win the state of Georgia by a little bit over 1 point. But Georgia is certainly a state to watch for 2028, where the Democrats won it in 2020, very competitive in 2024. If the Democrats are winning Georgia in 2028, it would certainly not be a shock to me whatsoever. Now the state of North Carolina. North Carolina is going to be very interesting to watch for 2028 as the Senate race in 2026 with Roy Cooper and Michael Whatley. This could be a rare instance of the Democrats maybe being able to elect a Democratic senator. We'll have to wait and see how that goes. At the presidential level, it voted for Donald Trump by 3.2% in 2024 after it voted for Trump by 1.3% in 2020. Now, again, I think 2028 will likely be a little bit more of a better red year than 2020 was a very good night for the Democrats. So I think North Carolina, for now, at the presidential level, will continue to retain its lean Republican margin, but I would not really be too shocked to see North Carolina being more competitive than it was in 2024. This puts J.D. Vance at 268, Kamala Harris 226, and what's looking like a repeat of 2024. But hold on. I did say that I think Kamala Harris is going to make some gains off the 2024 electoral map. Thus far, aside from the margins, she hasn't made any electoral vote gains yet. So far, every state she won in 2024, she's won in 2028. All she's done is had smaller margins of victories in the states that J.D. Vance has won, and larger margin of victories in a lot of the blue states that she's won. But the Rust Belt is where I think things could actually change a little bit. In 2024, Donald Trump won the state of Wisconsin by 0.86% against Kamala Harris. In 2020, it voted for Joe Biden by 0.63% against Donald Trump. So it's a state that certainly is willing to vote for both Republican and Democrat, and was the narrowest result of all the battleground states in 2024. 2026 is going to be a very big year for Wisconsin. In the midterm elections, both a governor's election that is up is going to be very important to watch, and this is also very important. The House races that are up, especially in the 3rd District in Wisconsin, may also be a big indicator at how Democrats are responding to President Trump in 2024 in the state of Wisconsin. I think we see Kamala Harris be able to move enough numbers here and enough voters here in the state of Wisconsin, and very specifically make some gains in these areas surrounding Dane County, which is where Madison is, and Columbia and Sauk, Iowa, Greene, and Rock. These counties are going to be very key to watch. I actually think we see Kamala Harris flip the state of Wisconsin in 2028. And I think she would win it by under 1 point, but I think we see Wisconsin flip towards Harris. Now, Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania have voted in unison in every election going back a very long time now. I think you have to go back super long time the last time that did not happen. I know through the 2000s it did, 1996 it did, 92 it did, 1988 was the last time they did not vote all in unison. And it'd be kind of a bold statement to say that won't happen again in 2028. But I do think Kamala Harris will win the state of Wisconsin. Michigan is where things are going to get very interesting, because Michigan voted for Donald Trump by 1.4% in 2024. After back in 2020, it voted for Joe Biden by 2.8%. So Michigan's going to be a state that's very close in 2028. And it's certainly a state, Kamala Harris, if she makes enough significant gains from 2024 to 2028, she certainly could win the state of Michigan. Now, my rankings personally right now have J.D. Vance winning the state of Michigan by 0.2%. So by the absolute thinnest of margins, J.D. Vance very narrowly holds on to the state of Michigan. But this is going to be a very close and important state that shows Kamala Harris making a lot of improvements in the state of Michigan. But I do think J.D. Vance very narrowly holds on and gets him over 270. Now we have the state of Pennsylvania and its 19 electoral votes, where J.D. Vance, or President Trump, defeated Kamala Harris here by 1.7%. After 2020, where Joe Biden won it by 1.2%. Now again, I think this is going to be super close. I think it's going to be under 1 point, but I think J.D. Vance does narrowly win the state of Pennsylvania at this current point in time by under that 1 point margin, around that 0.7, 0.8%. So right now I have J.D. Vance winning with 302, Kamala Harris getting 236, with Harris flipping the state of Wisconsin, going from red to blue from 2024 to 2028, but making a lot of, I would say, gains and such in a lot of safe Democratic states and some Democratic likely states as well, and enough changing in the vote to flip Wisconsin. That's how I currently have 2028 going between J.D. Vance and Kamala Harris right now. This is my prediction as of August 2025. Again, we'll have to wait and see how it all develops over the next 4 years and how things will change, as I'm sure they will, going from now until November of 2028. I hope you enjoyed this video. Make sure to like and subscribe if you did. Leave a comment below what you think would happen between Kamala Harris and J.D. Vance if they faced off in 2028, how you would have that race going. Also, if you really like this video, again, as I mentioned, make sure to hit like and click subscribe, as you'll get notified when I post more videos just like this one going forward. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you in a future video. Everyone, and welcome to today's video. Today we have some important news out of the state of California, where former Republican Representative Michelle Steele has officially announced she will not be seeking a comeback campaign in 2026 against Democratic incumbent Derek Tran. Now, if you're kind of a longtime returning viewer of mine, you'll know I covered this race in depth in the following days and weeks after the 2024 election as this was one of the last remaining contests happening in the 2024 elections in California's 45th Congressional District. I think it ended up going around a month after the election for this race to officially be called. Once everything was said and done, the Democrat Derek Tran defeated the Republican incumbent Michelle Steele by just about 600 votes in a super, super close race. Now, just to show you where this race actually is, obviously it's in the state of California, and you would have to zoom in a lot to know exactly where it is, but this district is going to be right here, sort of around the LA area. And Tran ended up winning 0.21% versus Michelle Steele, getting 158,264 votes, Michelle Steele getting 157,611, 50.1% to 49.99%. I mean, you really can't get any closer than this for an election. Now, this district is a very competitive district. When you look at the Cook PVI for this, it's only listed at Democrat +1 as of 2025. So this is going to be one of the closest races to watch for. And for the 2026 congressional map, the consensus rankings on 270towin.com have this race listed as a toss-up. So now, obviously, that's a Cook political report as well. The 2026 rankings also has it as a toss-up. So as redistricting gets talked about in the House right now, as that's a very hot topic and such, a lot of these other races, like this one in California, are very, very close and important to watch for the 2026 House elections and which party will hold the majority. Now, if California were able to redistrict, maybe they are able to redistrict this one to becoming more of a solid Democratic district. But for now, based on the current map, this is going to be one of the hotly most watched contested House matchups in the country for 2026. However, we now know that Michelle Steele will not be running in this race. I think the Republicans are still going to be pretty competitive in this district, but Michelle Steele likely would give the Republicans a stronger chance at winning than another Republican who has not proven they can win this district before. Derek Tran, the U.S. representative, who is the incumbent, is still a potential candidate. He's not officially said if he'll be running again, but in most instances, I assume the incumbent will run again until they say they are not going to. Cook Politico, Inside Elections, Saddle Crystal Ball all have this race listed as a toss-up, and as I mentioned, this district, which was super close in 2024, will play a very critical role in determining the margin of victory for the U.S. House of Representatives for either the Republicans or Democrats in 2026. Now, obviously, as I mentioned, with redistricting and everything possibly happening on the House side of things right now for 2026, everything's kind of up in the air. For looking at the 2026 House map, how things could go, who's running against who, which district is where, things are very much still chaotic. But looking at the 21 closely watched races for 2026, according to the consensus rankings, on that, Sabato's Crystal Ball has it 1 of 19, Cook Politico has it 1 of 18, Inside Elections has it 1 of 11. So this is going to be a very close race to watch for no matter who you ask. And this news that Michelle Steele is not running, I think is certainly very significant and one that's probably coming as welcome news for a lot of Democratic supporters and Democratic insiders that Michelle Steele will not try and run for this race. Just in case you're unaware, the current House composition, as of this current point in time, Republicans hold about 220 seats, Democrats hold 215, with that district narrowly being in the Democratic category in that close election. The Democrats hold that seat. Now, if the Republicans are able to win that, that would get the Republicans up to then 221 seats. So I'll just go in here real quickly and just assign it to the Republicans, if I can get it here. I clicked on the wrong one. I'll just zoom in the area. It's probably easier just to do it this way. I was trying not to have to zoom in, but here we go. This would get the Republicans to 221, Democrats 214. So this could be a very significant win if the Republicans are able to flip this seat back to the Republican category. And after only 600 votes, who's to say that they can't do that? Now, if the Democrats, if Derek Tran is able to hold on here and win this race, well, then that would certainly be very significant for the Democrats. And the Democrats would then not be too far off from flipping the U.S. House. Republicans have 220, Democrats 215 on the current map. Now, again, as I mentioned, you're not going to know for sure what the map will look like for 2026 if any of these House maps get redistricted. Ohio and Texas is looking like they're probably going to redistrict, and we'll have to wait and see how the Democrats respond from there. This is certainly going to be a very close race to watch for in 2026 if things remain the same. Now, for the House district in California's 45th district, I am going to pull up the election results to show you a more in-depth look at how this district broke down. Because this was a very close district, and I want to give the election results in this one justice. This district was only broken up by 2 counties, Orange County and County Los Angeles. Now, the populations here, Orange County made up a clear majority of votes in this district. Roughly of the 315,875 votes, Orange County had about 281,969 of them, so nearly 282,000 votes in Orange County. This district of Los Angeles, which the city of Los Angeles is split up into several congressional districts, it voted for, their voted total votes, 33,906 votes. Now, Orange County voted for Michelle Steele by a 1.3% overall population, and that gave Michelle Steele a net gain of 142,771 votes to Derek Tran's 139,198. So roughly 3,600 votes or 3,500 votes separated Michelle Steele and Derek Tran in Orange County. Now, 50.6%, 49.4% for Tran, it was not enough of a margin for Michelle Steele to win Orange County by only this little. Because this part of Los Angeles, even though it only had 33,000 votes, the margins of victory of a 12-point win for Derek Tran ended up giving him 19,066 votes to Michelle Steele's 14,840. Roughly 4,200 votes net gain in this Los Angeles district. So 4,200 minus that about 3,600 or so gives you that's roughly 600 vote difference in this very close, hotly contested district. So when you see the race being this close, and it was a super close race, 600 votes, for the Republican Michelle Steele to have won this election, she needed to get more votes out of Orange County. Because she could try to get more margins out of Los Angeles, but it's a lot easier to get Republican votes out of Orange County than to get more Republican votes out of Los Angeles. And seeing as Orange County is a lot larger in terms of population, Michelle Steele needed more votes out of Orange County to make up that 600 vote or so difference that happened between across this district. And just to show you how this race voted in 2022, I'm not just making this up. We actually saw this district play out that way in 2022, where the Republican was able to get a larger win here. In this district in 2022, Michelle Steele got 52.4% district-wide to the Democrat Jay Chen's 47.6%. Now, in the midterm, there was a lot less votes, only 217,426, but again, in this one, it was roughly a 16% win for Jay Chen over Michelle Steele in Los Angeles County. So the Democrat actually performed better in the Los Angeles County by percentages. The rough number of votes gained here is roughly about 4,600 or so. 4,600 net gain out of Los Angeles. But in Orange County, Michelle Steele had a much larger and impressive win in Orange County, where she won 54 to 46% and got roughly 14,000 net votes out of Orange County. And that was the difference between 2022 and 2024. That 14,000 vote gain made up for the 4,000 vote win in Los Angeles. But come to 2024, when you're getting about that 4,200 vote, an extra 200 votes or so in Los Angeles, that margin could easily been made up by the 2022 results, but only winning Orange County by 1.2% and only winning, or 1.3%, and only getting about an extra 4,000 votes or 3,600 votes or so, nowhere near enough to make up the margin of Los Angeles. So when you're talking about 2026, it's going to be a very simple question. When it's Derek Tran versus whoever the Republican will be now that's not Michelle Steele, is the election results more similar to 2022, where Los Angeles County may be going by this margin for the Democrats? What's Orange County doing? Is Orange County an 8-point win for the Republicans, or is it more like a 1.2% win for the Republicans, or is it somewhere in between? And depending on how it is in between there, that could be the difference between whether this race is going red or blue. If this district is any more in Orange County, any more Republican than it was in 2024, you have to count those votes very, very closely, because just a 1 point percentage difference in Orange County may be enough for the Republican to narrowly win. And now, obviously, this district goes more for the Democrat for Derek Tran. If Orange County ends up going for the Democrat, then obviously this race is over and Derek Tran's winning by a pretty comfortable margin. But this is going to be a very interesting race to watch for in 2026. Again, assuming it doesn't get redistricted, this is going to be a very close one to watch, and I can't wait to keep an eye on this one. I hope you enjoyed this video. Make sure to like and subscribe if you did. Leave a comment below. Tell me your thoughts on any other videos or districts you'd like to see me cover in the days ahead. Thank you so much for watching. Again, please remember to hit like and subscribe, and I hope to see you in a future video.